Hello, dear friends. Welcome. Can't believe it, but we're back again with another Brattlecast. One of my favorite projects is getting together with Ken Gloss, the owner of the Brattle Bookshop in Boston, a historic landmark, a place you don't want to miss when you visit the city. It's on West Street. And Ken, I mean, there's so much in the store. I don't know if you ever counted the number of volumes in terms of pages of paper. It would be in the hundreds of thousands, if not the millions. But
One of the questions we get is, "Have you read them all?" And my answer to that, even people who collect books and the people go into their house and say, "Have you read everything?" It's no, you usually haven't. And quite honestly, if I had to depend on people reading every book before they bought the next book, not only would I be out of business, every bookstore would be out of business, and every publisher would be out of business, and probably every author would be almost out of business. Because I don't know about you, but I tend to get stacks of books. I tend to get shelves of books that I mean to read,
yes.
that they wonderful to have at your touch and grasp, but there's no way you can read them all in 10 lifetimes.
No, exactly. You can listen to a thousand album collection, maybe. If you just put one album on a day, you can get through it. But reading a book takes a lot more time. Well, that's a question of a philosophical nature for another time. You wanted to add
Well,
something?
other than if you read a book while you're listening to the album.
You always have a good solution. So today, different kind of reading, and these are fascinating because they have, as so many of the things we talk about, an element of the history of the culture inside of each one of them. We're talking about catalogs, and this is another part of the collectible scene, and you certainly feature them as well as anybody else. So, what kind of catalogs are we talking about?
Well, when I first thought catalogs were fun, we got in a bunch of old catalogs from the 20s and 30s. One was a beautiful catalog on perfumes. I'd said that sounds good. Then one was on linoleum, which brings up all other things, and then another one on dyes and fabrics. And I'm going, yeah, this is interesting. It tells a lot about the times and the people. And then I got a big collection of old auto catalogs, most of them from the 50s, 60s, 70s. And I go, Corvettes, GTOs, Mustangs are a lot more interesting and fun, at least for this podcast.
Yes, at least for you and me. So, before we talk about specific catalogs, and they're really cool, I mean, the whole idea of printed material today is so much less popular, and it's put a lot of printers and designers out of business. But these were the rage, right? Every big manufacturer of some product had a catalog, not just Sears and Roebuck.
Oh, absolutely. And when you do look at a lot of these old catalogs, what people love to look at is, first of all, the prices,
Mm,
what it costs then. Of course, what they don't look at the same time is what the paycheck that you were getting each week looked at.
right,
So
right.
it looked like you could get anything you wanted for really, really cheap, but your labor was also commensurate with that. But one of the things, the reason that the car catalogs were particularly interesting is I went to someone's house. They had a huge library, 3, 4, 5,000 books, a lot of history, a lot of literature. And then when I was going through the basement, they had some other things. And I opened up some boxes, and they were all these automobile catalogs. And the husband had passed on, and I said to his wife, gee, what are those? And she said, well, he loved old cars, and he was friends with a lot of people who had dealerships. So they'd always save him the catalogs, and he'd just come down, put them in a bag, then put them in a box. And there were 6, 7, 8 of these boxes. And, you know, the books he had were really good. I was really happy to buy them, happy to move them and all the work. But I'll tell you, when I got back to the shop, the things that I really wanted to look at were the old catalogs of the cars. And it's interesting because there are a couple of things that you usually get with dealerships when you're looking at cars. One is the sales brochures. And there you see these beautiful cars laid out in all the different colors and the engines, and they're going through the countryside and just beautiful. The others are the manuals that come with the cars, and they're pretty straightforward. In other words, this panel has this, that has that.
Right.
And when people call me and say we have all these car brochures, which every once in a while happens, if it's the technical manuals, I say, yeah, they're nice, they're good. You go to the auto shows and people still like them. But really, a lot of those people, because they collect the car, a lot of times want that because it came with the car, or it shows you how to operate and use.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not nearly as graphically beautiful as the brochure that's selling it. And, I look back at these and I see like the early 60s, the Mustangs. I see the GTOs, the Camaros. And then there was one bag that had Corvettes, like about 8 or 10 years of Corvettes. And, when you were talking about old albums, I sort of felt like I should have gotten a turntable and put the Beach Boys on while I was looking for these catalogs. But it brings back that sort of memory, that uh, idealized, and people love them because, again, it does bring back the era. It does bring back the design. You look at the cars of the time and you sort of can picture yourself again with the radio turned up loud, maybe the top come down, maybe the old Thunderbird car, which was a totally and completely impractical car. I mean, it had two seats and almost nothing else, but boy, was that fun to be in. And
It's interesting that we talk about this today because in the news of the day, there's a story about electric vehicles. We all know about electric vehicles that are now adding sound, the sound of the engine revving and so forth. And it's all done electronically, like through the radio. But it tells you that people, particularly of a male persuasion, really love the idea of an engine and a V8 and pistons and all that stuff, even if they have to fake it on electric vehicles.
well, and the other thing about that, when you say that the sound, one of the unnerving things sometimes about electrical or vehicles are that you don't have a sound. And if someone's near the car, I know that I actually read an article that some of the law enforcement and traffic police are worried about it, or when there's an emergency, they don't know whether the car is still running. And if you touch it, if it might take off on you. In other words, if there's been an accident, if there's been, they can't actually tell because there's no sound. And so actually having a little sound there might be a real safety issue too.
Let me ask you a question since you've seen the catalogs and I know you've poured through them. Have you noticed a difference from, say, 50, 60 years ago in colors of cars, the way colors were presented back then? I mean, to me, they were much more bright and effervescent and interesting than the white and silver and gray that we seem to
Well,
have all
well,
those.
what I noticed going through them is the cars that were sort of the quote sedan, or when you got into the functional car, they tended to be a little bit more boring.
Mhm.
Whereas when you were into the Corvettes, the Mustangs, the cars and the colors and the interior was a little more dynamic. But that's what they were selling. And and also when you look back on it, the one of the things that I really did notice is the larger vehicles, the quote station wagon that they had. Well, when you look at the size of that, you look at it nowadays and say that's really small, or even the pickup trucks of their time. I mean, I have a pickup truck now that holds. See, of course, the way I look at it, it holds almost 2,000 books. I'm looking at the pickup trucks from the 60s, and if you could get 750, or it, you'd be lucky. The other thing that you also notice tremendously is, and I actually think of this when I was looking at these cars, is a lot of these big sort of muscle cars that you really go to get out on and you really put the top down and you would be out in a beautiful day. They have almost zero safety features that
Including
they do
seatbelts in some
nowadays.
cases. Right. Yeah, that's
No,
true.
no, no
No
seat belts,
airbag
no
or no.
airbags, no. The brakes weren't as good. I mean, you really realize that although maybe the design on some of them aren't as nice, but they actually are safer. But what I loved about these catalogs, though, is we a lot of them don't get a lot of money, but we might make a window of them out at the store, and people, I almost guarantee you, will stop and be looking at that window and saying, "Oh, I had one of those," or "My father had one of those," or "My mother drove that one," or and there was just a smattering of really old ones in this collection. Now, I know that they got them mostly from dealerships, but he also must have collected because there were a few Packards and LaSalle's back in the 20s and 30s.
Well,
Almost you could picture those with the chauffeur in front in a black suit, with the couple or person in the back, sitting there and
very
whatever,
Sunset Boulevard, yeah.
very sensible. But I'll tell you, what you could definitely tell about those catalogs, the catalogs themselves were probably beyond what most people at the time could buy and pay. Forget about the car. But it just, you see them, they bring back that time period. Well, even when I watched this whole group of catalogs go from the 50s to the 60s, which is when I started getting interested, the later 60s, the 70s, and it went up until about 2000. And you could actually, if you put some of them, and I have done this, next to each other, you see also the design, the aerodynamics on some of them, how they opened them up a little. Uh, Occasionally, when they had doors that lifted up rather than open and close, and you can see the features that that sort of go from one to the next to the next. And I'll tell you, you look at the consoles, and you look at the consoles now. Now you're looking at a computer screen
Yeah.
because you are looking at a computer screen. There, you actually had, I noticed those things that looked like on the door that you'd crank, that maybe the window went up and down, or that you put your foot down and the high beams went on.
How
You
about
know,
the tires? A lot of white walls. Did you notice?
a lot of white walls, although they were in some cases, the wheels themselves were starting to get a lot fancier.
Hmm.
And it also depended on the car. Um, Almost all the cars, you also saw places for the spare tire. Nowadays, you get into a lot of cars don't have spare tires. Uh, you could see these differences going from the year to year to year. But I think the main thing is people who are auto enthusiasts. I don't think any of these catalogs that I got, maybe some of the Corvettes. I've never driven a Corvette. I probably won't if, at the rate I'm going. But those might be higher. They're harder to get. There are less of them, but you could really see almost an era of design going through, and you could picture yourself, someone going, "Oh, that was my first car." Even the Dodge Darts and the in
Now you're
those type.
talking.
Uh,
Well,
People can look back, and
I was
most of them.
thinking, Ken, I was thinking about something as you were talking. How much fun we've had when you've brought in Life magazines from the '40s or whatever. And I think a lot of us love to learn and love to experience the advertising, the not the hard news, but the stuff that we all knew as consumers. And I think that's why these catalogs may be very appealing to people like me, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And you put them in and they attract people in the window. And most of them are fairly common. They put out huge numbers of them. They sell for a few dollars. Maybe some go for higher. But they're they're fun things, and a lot of collecting. It's about the fun. It's about bringing back the memories. One of the things, I haven't looked through them at all. I'm very interested to see because there was a lot of Chevys. I'm waiting to find a bag filled with Corvairs. Uh,
My uncle
you
had a
know,
Corvair. Ralph Nader,
well,
unsafe at any speed.
well, exactly. And my one of my college roommates had a Corvette that had no heat. There'd
Mm.
no heat in it. So in the winter, when we drove around, he used to have sleeping bags for everybody. But
Well,
again, just bringing back the memories. And that's what a lot of the collecting is, whether it's this automobiles, the cars. Like I say, when I'm going and looking at these, it brings back the music of the period. It brings back, oh yeah, I went there with this car. I went there with that one. The roads were different. It just brings back all these memories. And even though it's not high priced, it's not going to make me a fortune. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I know when we start putting them out, we're going to get a lot of calls.
No doubt. And I hope that for one of your upcoming birthdays, your wife figures out a way for you to drive a Corvette, even for a day. I mean, there must be a way. You could rent one, I suppose.
I suppose, although, at one point I had a 1968 Mustang.
Oh,
That almost would bring back a lot more memories.
that's a bullet car, from the movie around that era,
Uh,
1967,
oh,
68.
it was a lot of fun, and it was it lasted, and I had a lot of fun with it. So I'd actually prefer to find one of those. I know how to drive it. I'd feel well. I don't know if I'd feel comfortable at this point, but the other thing I'm looking for when I get to the Fords is to see if there are any of the Mustangs from that period. A lot of
Oh, yeah.
memories.
A lot of memories, a lot of inventive, creative ideas that we talk about here on the Brattlecast. You can find out more about the real thing that we talk about at the Brattle Bookshop, brattlebookshop.com. Ken, thank you so much. Rev up your engines. I'm ready to take off.
Yes, I am too.